Episode 314, Mark Struczewski, Mr. Productivity, coach and podcast host.
Which one is going to be the number one? And I'd have to say, when I was fired from my corporate job back in 2005.
I'm Mark Graban. This is My Favorite Mistake. In this podcast, you'll hear business leaders and other really interesting people talking about their favorite mistakes. Because we all make mistakes, but what matters is learning from our mistakes instead of repeating them over and over again. So this is the place for honest reflection and conversation, personal growth, and professional success. Visit our website at myfavoritemistakepodcast.com. To learn more about Mark, his coaching, his podcast, his free ebook, and more, look for links in the show notes or go to markgraban.com/mistake314. And now, on with the show. Hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm your host, Mark Graban. Our guest today is Mark Struczewski, known as Mr. Productivity. That's easier to say than Struczewski. Is a Houston-based productivity coach and podcast host with over 1,300 episodes. Mark brings boundless energy to helping professionals conquer the state of overwhelm. He draws on his daily running routine and his corporate experience. Mark offers practical strategies to transform distractions into focused action. So his podcast is called the Mr. Productivity Podcast. He's also written an ebook. It's available through his website. It's called Productivity Power Moves, Crush Distractions, and Get More Done. So Mark, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am so thankful to be here. I'm excited for the topic we're going to talk about because I think in this day and age, a lot of people shy away from talking about their mistakes, but I don't, because if I can help one person as a result of me being on your show, to me, that's a win.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate you and everybody who comes on here and is willing to have those conversations. Listening to this podcast, hopefully, from the listener standpoint, not a distraction. It's something that's going to help them boost their productivity, an investment in future productivity. Good assumption. Good guess.
Oh, 100%. I think you nailed it right on the head of the nail.
Yeah. So I look forward to, talking about productivity with you. But as we always do here, Mark, the different things you've done in your career, what's your favorite mistake?
When we had the pre-interview call, I admitted to you, I'm like, which one is going to be the number one? And I'd have to say, when I was fired from my corporate job back in 2005, and I went on this wonderful journey called being a solopreneur.
Yeah.
I really thought that when I hung my shingle out in January 2011, that's when I actually launched my website. I thought I would have tons of clients and people would just be lining out at my door and like, hey, we want to give you money. That didn't happen. It was a lot more work. So I think the mistake was I had unrealistic expectations.
So where do you think those expectations come from? You're an optimistic guy. You say there's other solopreneurs out there that seem really busy. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about maybe where the expectation came from and how long it took to sink in that, this is hard.
I think I was telling myself stories that when I became a solopreneur, it was going to be easy. I don't think I ever ran across anyone on social media or email or in real life that said, hey, becoming a solopreneur is easy. Here are 3 steps. Do these, you'll become a multimillionaire. I don't think that was the case. I think it was, I didn't know. There's a saying that you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know. I just thought, wow, being my own boss, this is going to be awesome. And I'm sure I read or saw some things out there that said, hey, when you are a solopreneur, it's a lot of work. But I think it kind of like, not me. I'm going to be different. Well, guess what? I was not different.
Yeah. So what did you do to adjust? I mean, there's always this risk of like, with double down on the wrong approaches. Did you think through sticking with it versus giving up and going back to corporate? Like how did you process or work through that?
there were numerous times when I just wanted to give up
Yeah.
because in the early days, I was spending money my family didn't have on things it turns out I didn't need, but I
Mhm.
didn't know. I was just like, oh, I was like Oprah. I'm like, here's some money for this coach, and here's some money for this conference, and here's some money for this course. And I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And what took me to the point where it was time to wake up was when I put our family in a financial bind. We were getting to the point where there was way more money going out than was coming in, and my wife was working full time, and
Yeah.
she was paying the household expenses and also paying some of the business expenses. And when I got to that point, I'm like, okay, this is not sustainable. I've got to stop, and I got to rethink what is the path for me to succeed. And once I realized that, my trajectory changed.
So tell us more about that path. Was it a matter of, if you think of like, a marketing and sales funnel, was it a matter of getting more people to your website, reaching out to more people? I mean, how did you kind of work on solving that? Or was it a matter of trying to turn leads into closed sales?
No, it was actually getting more focused. So I was thinking I was Gary Vaynerchuk with a team of 15 people. And so I was creating content for all the platforms. I was creating an email newsletter. I was doing all these things. And I was so scattered because I was like a juggler trying to juggle like 18 balls at once instead of focusing on what are the 1, 2, maybe 3 things I should focus on. And once I started really focusing on those things, that's where I channeled all my efforts. That's when it changed. Because when you go out there and you're like, oh, yeah, well, there's all these social media platforms. They're all free. I can post on all of them. But should you? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So for me, it came down to focus.
So there's kind of a sub mistake within the mistake. We're unpacking here. So, I mean, it seems like with productivity, whether it's you and your business, and maybe this comes down to the definitions of productivity, and we can dig into this. But it seems like maybe the risk of doing more, like I'm productive, I have more output of content and platforms, and doing more versus doing the right things, like productivity versus effectiveness. Different words. What are your thoughts on like trying, kind of in general for people where maybe trying to just flat out doing more turns out not to be the right approach?
You can be busy being productive, but just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being productive. And I like the analogy of the hamster on a wheel. That was me. Yeah. I was running really fast, but I wasn't going anywhere. And I had to stop and go, okay, I know where I want to go. Is what I'm working on during the day moving me toward or away from that goal? And when I took some time, I got off the electronics, I went out in my backyard, I grounded my feet, sat in the sun, and I journaled. I'm like, what should I be doing? And I crossed off more things on my list than I actually left on my list because we're doing too much. Yeah. And most of the things I crossed off were not moving the needle. I needed to move that needle, and I wanted to focus on a few things and do them very well.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard people talk about the idea of not just having a to-do list, but having a stop doing list or a not do list, or even the context we've passed January now, but sometimes people start the year with the resolutions of the things I'm going to start doing. I've heard others advocate for that being a time to reflect and say, well, what are the things I did last year that I should do less of?
I don't do resolutions because I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to start going to the gym more. I believe in goals, specific goals. Like a goal that I just came up with 2 days ago is I'm a daily runner, as you mentioned, and I've been running 5Ks lately. I've never run a 10K. Now, I don't do it competitively. I run first thing in the morning. I do it on my own, but I've never run a 10K. So my goal sometime this year is to run a 10K. I live in Houston. It will not be in the months of June, July, August, September. I can guarantee you that much. But I want to run a 10K, which is 6.22 miles, just so I can say I did it. But that's a definitive goal. Either I will run a 10K or I won't run a 10K. It's not like, well, maybe. It's a yes or no. It's very binary.
Mm-hmm. And that time spent running is important, even if it's not quote unquote productive? Or am I looking at that wrong?
No, it is very productive. And one of the things I've been doing lately is actually leaving the headphones behind. So no audiobooks, no podcasts, no music. And what happens is it's just me running. My brain is free to give me all these ideas and think about it. And when you have something in your ears all the time, your brain is trying to process that input instead of ideas. So I tell people, you don't have to be a runner. You can be a daily walker. But when you leave the headphones behind and you go, while I'm on this run, while I'm on this walk, I want to figure out a solution. Now your brain has that space.
Yeah.
And it is being very productive.
Yeah, I'm a walker. Never been a runner. I do have that habit of listening to podcasts, and I've been curious. I think as the weather warms up here in Cincinnati, this is the time of year opposite of Houston where it's harder to go out and walk anyway. I wanted to experiment. I've heard what some people refer to as walking meditation. Or it's just this idea of like, you got to pay attention to your surroundings and you're not closing your eyes, but using that time to think, to reflect, and you've written, I've written. Some people ask about writing productivity. How many hours did you spend working on the book? And I'm like, I don't know, because the time I was out walking and thinking about it, does that count? I don't track any of that closely. So maybe I'll try that, whether it's in the gym on a treadmill or when I go and walk and think instead of walking and just taking inputs.
And it's so powerful because I was born in 1965. So I remember when there wasn't a Walkman, there wasn't streaming. And if you went outside, you were with your thoughts. And I think now in 2025, we always feel like we've got to be on our technology. Well, no, maybe you give your brain space to just think. It's okay. One of my favorite books I've read is Deep Work, and Cal Newport talks about embracing the boredom. So many people are afraid of being bored this day and age. Always got to be doing something, but your brain is probably saying, hey, let's just be bored. Yeah. I mean, I remember I would complain to my mother. I'm like, I'm bored. She goes, being bored is good for you. I didn't realize how wise my mother was.
Yeah. And that's coming from Mr. Productivity, that it's okay to be bored. So when would you say, for your business, when would you say, what year was it when you feel like you got things figured out, you hit your stride, you got cooking, you figure, okay, yeah, this is good?
What year are we in? No, I'm just kidding. I think it was.
I'm not saying you need to have it all figured out.
Anybody who says they've got it all figured out is not telling the truth.
Right.
Well, we're in 2025. I would say probably 2021 and 2022, around that time, is when I finally figured it out. Because prior to that, like I said earlier, I was the 3 C's: coaches, courses, and conferences. I was just spending money and I didn't have any clarity, which I guess is another C. About 21, 22, that's when I'm like, okay, now I understand what I need to be doing. And I never want to arrive. So I'm always pushing the goalposts further out because I don't want to say, hey, I made a touchdown, game over. So I constantly want to get better and better. And I think if you ever get to a point where you settle, I think it's a mistake. And I never want to retire because my late father, was 82 when he passed away. And even though he'd been retired for 20 years, he was very active. And I also know people who they get up all day and they just watch TV all day. And I'm like, talk about boredom. That has no interest in me whatsoever. So I want to be active. I'll be 60 in June of 2025. And I feel like I'm 42, but I love what I do. And I think if people start figuring out what they love to do, life is not a chore anymore.
Yeah. So you get to a point where we can call you Mr. Longevity, that the productivity and keeping active, I think would be good for you. Our guest again here today, Mr. Productivity, Mark Struczewski. I want to talk, start off with definitions. I mean, productivity is a word people know and hear, but they might have different definitions of it. First off, how do you define productivity?
Doing the right things at the right time. And you need both components. So you could do the right thing at the wrong time, or you could do the right at the right time, you do the wrong thing. But you got to do the right thing at the right time. And this is one of the things I love about my job as a productivity coach. Everybody's different. I think if it was an assembly line or boilerplate coaching, I would have quit long ago. Yeah. I love the fact that everybody is different. This person may be single. This person has 4 kids under the age of 6. This person has 2 kids in college and 2 kids at home. I love that because, number one, it keeps me sharp. I can't just give the same advice to everybody. But more than that, I think I identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, and I love what I do. And as you mentioned, I'm very optimistic. I think that is a key to anyone's productivity. So if you were at a job, you're making a lot of money, had a lot of perks, but you're like, oh, I got to go to work again. Would it be better? And this is what I want to challenge the listener to think about. Would it be better to go do something else? You make less money, have less perks, but you're happy because then your productivity is going to do the proverbial hockey stick and shoot right up.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say it's interesting to me, you talk about clients being different. When you're working with a client, how much do you try to understand their situation up front to tailor the advice versus trying things and learning through, if you will, mistakes or failures? Does that help you refine the way you're coaching somebody? Do you let them experiment and discover what works for them?
The first call I have with every client is called a strategy session. This is where I find out where are they now and where do they want to go? What's your home environment like? Do you have any health issues? Do you have a financial issue? All these things, because if I don't understand all that stuff, it's called getting clarity. It's very hard for me to take you to where you want to go. My wife and I are empty nesters. We just have 2 dogs. And if I have another client exactly like me, I know I can challenge them in certain areas. But if you got 4 kids under the age of 6 and they're all homeschooled, well, now it's a little bit different. So the first call is all about understanding what is the client dealing with now and where they want to go. Is that even possible this year? Maybe you need a 5-year or 10-year plan. So I have seen that there's a pandemic in our world of lack of clarity. People think they have clarity. They really don't. And I can tell that because when we get on a call and I start asking these thinking questions, they're like, whenever I hear the word, I'm like, okay, you haven't thought about this in a while. And that call, at the end of the call, they feel mentally exhausted, but they feel excited the same way because they say, I've never had this much clarity before. And it's really important that wherever you want to go in life, you have to get clarity where you are now, where you want to go, and what are the steps to get there.
It seems like that clarity is necessary for us to decide when you say doing the right thing at the right time. That's a judgment call. How do we decide what's right? And imagine without clarity, everything seems right or nothing seems right.
Yeah, like I said, getting clear can apply to every industry, every person in this world. And if you look at the high performers in our world, and I like reading about them, I like studying them, I can sense that they have a high degree of clarity. You look at a Brendan Burchard or Grant Cardone, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tony Robbins, they're really clear what they want to do today, tomorrow, this quarter, and this year. And you look at other people like, well, I want to watch the show on Netflix. I'm like, is that really getting clear? And so there's a very distinct dividing line. I'm not talking monetarily. There's a distinct dividing line between the high performers and the people who are like, they're excited about a 3-day weekend or they're excited about 5 o'clock. There's a big difference. And I just want people to think about how clear they are. And if they're not clear, here's an easy way to get clear.
Mm-hmm.
You turn your electronics off, get yourself a notebook, a pen, and maybe a bottle of water, go someplace quiet and just do a brain dump and just say, what do I want? And it doesn't cost you anything but your time. But people want the pill. People want the shot. They just tell me. I can't tell you what to do. That's why on my show, I never give absolutes, because if I say do this for 2 days, people will literally do it for 2 days. Well, it may take you 4 days, but it may take this other person 1 day. So I don't like to deal in absolutes. But I think getting away, getting quiet, don't have your phone on, and just asking yourself right at the top of the piece of paper, what do I want to do in my life? And just brainstorm. That's going to get you further than if you endlessly scroll on social media.
So that seems like a much more holistic approach to productivity, instead of like an approach that, might just try to squeeze more hours or, into the day, or cutting out minutes of wasted time. Like what I'm hearing from you, and I have a much better appreciation for now, is you might call it like, directed productivity. Back to the idea of, again, like not just doing more, but as you put it, doing the right things at the right time. I think
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'm a huge European football fan. In America, we call it soccer. And every once in a while, my team will play an afternoon game. Now it's 8 o'clock in the evening over in England, but over here it's 2 o'clock. And people ask me, oh, so Mr. Productivity, you watch football during the day? I said, but I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I work all the way up until 2 o'clock. So I'm putting in a full day's worth of work. I'm getting stuff done. I'm not just sitting there watching football all day. So I believe, because I believe joy is a key component to productivity. When I watch football, except when my team loses, as they did yesterday, it's not so joyful, but football brings me joy. When you're joyful, you tend to be more productive. So I don't want you to judge people and say, oh, you should not be watching Netflix at lunch. Well, why? If you worked real hard that morning and you want to watch an episode, not 7 episodes, an episode at lunch, then go ahead and do that. I don't want people to overthink it, and certainly don't overcomplicate it. You need to figure out what brings you joy and do that so you get more things done.
And it seems like the risk of productivity being like this 24/7 grind, work leads to burnout. And then that doesn't help your productivity over time. And there I saw people, you talk about soccer, football. I saw a couple people post about American football. Last Sunday, as we're recording this, was, of course, the Super Bowl. It almost felt like parody of people posting on LinkedIn, like, I'm the sales, grinded out productivity guy, work. And when you were watching that football game, I was cold calling people. And for one, I'm like, who in the world is answering a cold call or appreciating a cold call during the Super Bowl? Like, it's hard to tell, like, what was sort of like performative satire versus like, did he really do that? It might be misplaced productivity.
Well, I think people like to brag, like, I worked, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But burnout's a real deal. So back in the summer 2023, I went on this rampage where I said, I'm going to run a 5K every day for as long as I could. And I think I made it 4.5 months. I was burnt out. I almost ended my run streak because I focused more on the doing every single day instead of listening to my body. And if I think about it, when I was probably about 2/3 of the way through, my body was going, dude, we need to take a day off. Now, a day off for a daily runner means you run 1 mile. That's it. That's and you run it slow, but you keep the streak alive. I've been running every day since August 29th, 2017. But I got burnt out because there was a lot of days, especially the last third of that 5K streak, I'm just like, I got to get that number, increase another number. And my legs were hurting. My back was hurting. And I really dreaded going off my run. Now I'm starting another 5K run streak, but I told my wife this time I'm going to see if my body wants to do a 5K when I run out. I did 4 days so far. Tomorrow may be a 1 mile. It may be, I guess it's 1.6K. But when you are burning out, that's your body saying, hey, whoa, stop, pay attention. Don't keep grinding. These people say, I work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay, you may need that because you may need the money. But if you don't take care of your health and wellness, and I believe health and wellness is a huge part of being productive, you are going to have some significant issues. And then you're really not going to be productive because you're going to be probably in a bed in the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to listen. Are we mentally fatigued? Are we physically fatigued? There's probably a lot of parallels there. And I think the one issue with people bragging about how much time they worked, that doesn't mean it's productive, or there's a related word, efficiency. Like I would define, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, Mark. To me, efficiency is a ratio of outputs divided by inputs. And, there's this question of like, my roots are in manufacturing. At some point, a certain number of outputs is enough. Like, how much is your customer buying? And some manufacturing companies get into a lot of trouble by they make their efficiency numbers look good because that's what a manager is being rewarded for. They're producing cars that sit there, products that sit there for months or for years. It's like a false efficiency in terms of, instead of stepping back and saying like, well, at some point, enough is enough. We need to do maintenance on the machines the way we might need to stop and maintain our body or our knees or our ankles. I think there's kind of an efficiency trap, but I think the key is like the outputs. Like if you're making 100 cold calls instead of 60 cold calls, and it's not turning into more sales, that's actually less efficient in terms of figuring out, I think I'll use your productivity framework, calling the right people at the right time might lead to better business results.
Here are my thoughts about efficiency. And I'm Mr. Productivity, and I get caught up in this as well. Yeah. So what I use Buffer to post on Threads and X, and I schedule my content on Instagram and LinkedIn. Right. And right now, I have posts scheduled on LinkedIn through the middle of April. Why? I have posts scheduled on Threads for like a month out. Why? And I'm trying to discipline myself. Sunday, sit down and schedule a post for that week. A week is all I need, because here's what happens. It happens all the time. Oh, I got an idea. Like, I just launched that ebook that you talked about. So the post that went out today, I had to reschedule it to put the new post in there. So I don't think just because I can schedule 6 months out doesn't mean I should. That's not being very efficient.
Lots of outputs, but I mean, scheduling them out is better than a lot of posts actually releasing them as you're thinking of them. And that can hurt supposedly on the LinkedIn algorithms, or, I mean, this is diving into a real tactical question. How often do you post on LinkedIn? I've heard different advice about whether like, you shouldn't post more than once a day. What do you think?
I have a lot of friends who are LinkedIn experts, and they all say there's the once a day, there's the 18-hour, and then there's people like Gary say, post on LinkedIn like you post on X, like 10, 12 times a day. Now, Gary can do that because Gary has got like 1 billion followers. Yeah. I post once a day at 7 a.m. Central Time, which is 8 a.m. East Coast. For me, it's more about the DMs. So I was afraid of DMs for so long. Now I'm addicted to it because I'm trying to have these one-on-one conversations. I just post out there so people may connect with me or engage, and I can have some conversations. So that's what I do. I do one a day, and it's all about the videos 99.9% of the time, which, from a kid who didn't want to speak in front of an empty room, I'm very open with my video. I'm always recording myself. So I'm always posting videos, but the video you see today, I probably recorded like 3 months ago, because harness the power of evergreen. So when I'm creating videos, I never say this weekend, because some people may watch that video 4 weeks down the road. Same with our podcast. Try to keep the podcast evergreen in case someone listens to episode 500 of mine. It's, I'm not always doing that, but I try to do that because I think it's really important. But in answer to your question, for me right now, it's once a day. I did the twice a day, but I didn't notice a change, good or bad. So I just went back to once a day.
Yeah. I want to ask you your thoughts around like recognizing like fluctuations in productivity. Like, I think one thing I've struggled with is, maybe having or realizing that, kind of having unfair expectations that I could somehow be equally productive every day, when there's a lot of things that go into that. Like, how much sleep, how well did I sleep the night before? How am I feeling today physically or mentally? And, for me, there's been a bit of a journey of trying to recognize we're not a machine, we're not a robot, to show myself a little bit of grace of saying, like, today is really, it's not the highest productivity day. That doesn't mean watching 7 episodes of anything on Netflix. That's not what I mean. But like days where it's just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not as, mentally energized. And some days are high productivity days. I don't think there's huge peaks and valleys there, but, just trying to cut myself some slack instead of giving myself a hard time for slacking off. Like, what are your thoughts around, like, is that something we just kind of have to accept? Are there things that we can do to level out our productivity, or is that not something to worry about?
Nobody is going to have a consistent level of productivity because we are human. You may wake up, you have a stomach ache, or you have some body aches, or you've got a cold or the flu, and you've got to give yourself grace. Even if you're not feeling it mentally, I say if you're a solopreneur or you're an entrepreneur and you have the power and you're like working in the morning, it's like walking through quicksand with, bricks attached to your ankles. Maybe you just take the rest of the day off. And maybe you go to a park, or you take your significant other out to lunch, or maybe you do watch 7 episodes of Netflix for one day. I want to be very clear.
Sure.
For one day. If you're really not feeling it and it's like punching air or pushing a rope, well, maybe your productivity would benefit tremendously if you just say, you know what? I'm not even going to, this day's a loss. I'm just going to go do something fun. And tomorrow your productivity will probably peak because now you've given your body the chance to just like, hey, I didn't have to think about business for a half a day.
Yeah. No, I think that's smart. That really resonates with me. And I think back to, again, your framing of doing the right things at the right time. I've learned there are certain frames of mind, or there are certain times to do administrative tasks that I need to do for my business that just have to get done and don't require a lot of thought, versus days and times when I'm doing more creative work. And I think recognizing that, or even, learning, I tend not to record podcasts early in the morning anymore. Like, we're recording this at 11 a.m. Eastern. For me, I think that's just, it's better. It's not first thing in the day. It's not later in the day when I might start getting a little laggy in the afternoon. I think that's part of my productivity journey is just sort of setting some boundaries and at least recognizing at least what works well for me. Hopefully that lines up with my guests and the good times for them.
And if it doesn't, that's okay. I know people who will do like 9 episodes in one day, and I'm like, there's no way that 9th episode is going to be as good as the first one. I won't believe it. And I think you're tapping into something really important here. You've got to know, when are you really at your peak? Now, I'm a morning person, and I got to give credit to Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club, which convinced me no longer to be a night owl. But for me in the morning, I do my morning routine, which takes about an hour because I'm 60. I'll be 60 in June, and I feel like I'm 42. And then when I'm done, I go and attack the DMs, that's what I do, because that's, for me right now at this time in my life, being in the DMs on LinkedIn is the number one thing I'm working on. That's what I do first thing. And I make sure I do 50 DMs every day before I move on. Then I will go comment on another social media platform, or maybe I'll create some content for myself. But first off, for me, I'm not saying the listener, for me, it's being in the DMs, because I stopped working at 4 o'clock because I've been up all day and I start losing energy at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you can't book a coaching call with me at 4 o'clock, because I will not be able to serve you well at 4 o'clock. And so I'm not going to allow you to book that time, because I want to always show up the best version of me so I can best serve you.
Yeah. And, about 2 weeks ago, this didn't affect you, but, I had some podcasts scheduled. About 2 weeks ago, I had some really bad congestion. I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't sounding good. And I thought, like, this is not something that I should put into an everlasting recording on the internet. So I've learned to be less shy about just reaching out and saying, I'm sorry, I'm sick. I need to ask you to reschedule. And yeah, I'm sorry if that's an inconvenience, but it's almost become a sorry, not sorry. Like I'm sick. I have no choice. And people are very understanding of that, because there's a lot of viruses and cold and flu going around, and maybe they weren't feeling well, but maybe they thought they had to power through it. So that's how it goes sometimes. But I wanted to ask you, a follow-up question on the DMs or the direct messages. How much of that is reaching out, reconnecting with people who are already in your network, versus let's say in mails or outreach, or kind of trying to contact new people? How has that worked as a strategy for you?
Right now, my outreach on LinkedIn is focused on all the connections I have, because when I first joined LinkedIn years ago, I was collecting connections like people collect stamps.
Yeah.
It didn't matter who you were. I just connect with everybody. So now I'm going through every connection one at a time. If they're in the productivity space, I'm like, I may remove the connection, like life coaches, stuff like that, because I'm trying to focus on people who could use my help. So I go through, and I got a formula what I do, but I'm going through, before I get any more new connection, I'm going through my whole list. And the further I get back, I'm like, why in the world did I connect with this person? I have no idea, but they probably sent me a connection request and I just accepted it. And so I'm actually purging my connections, and the ones that I want to have a conversation with, then I will, because I'm not always good with words, I'll go into ChatGPT and I say, hey, I want to reach out to Fred. Here's what I want to say. And I type it, and then it takes and I've got in ChatGPT, I've got my Tigger personality. It'll take what I typed in there. It'll make it sound a lot more professional.
Yeah.
So it's not really like using AI. I don't like the AI DMs or AI comments. What I do is I type what I want to say into ChatGPT, and I say, make this sound better. And so then I paste that in there, so I sound a little better, because I tend to interrupt myself or use the wrong conjugation, stuff like that. So that's how I use ChatGPT as a tool. But in answer to your question, I'm trying to work on all my connections first, and then I'll go back, because I was connected with a lot of people, but then I'm like, you know what? There's probably a lot of treasure in the connections you haven't talked to like ever. And so that's what I'm focusing on right now.
Cool. Our guest again today, Mr. Productivity, his website is Mr. spelled out, MrProductivity.com, Mark Struczewski. Last thing I want to ask you, Mark, the ebook, again, that is Productivity Power Moves, Crush Distractions, and Get More Done. Give us a little overview of the ebook, if you would.
I want to give you credit, because I just released that 2 days ago. And I'm like, wow, this guy's awesome.
I checked out your website this morning just to finalize your bio, and there it was. I didn't realize it was that new.
Yes, brand new. So I wanted to create a new product, but I didn't know what I could create. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, look, I've got 1,328 episodes. Could you help me create a book? And so I uploaded every one of my episodes. I got a spreadsheet of all the episodes I've done. I said, take a look at all the episodes I've done, ignore all the guest episodes, and give me an idea. So it came up with a framework. Then I had to upload in a single file all the transcripts from my podcasts. And because I know sometimes ChatGPT will fill some things, I don't know, just use my stuff. And it gave me a book. It's a $27 ebook, as you mentioned. And then said, well, to give more value to this, why don't you read it? And so I read it. So when you buy the book, you get the MP3. So you might want to listen to my melodious voice or whatever. And so I literally just came up with that. But that's why I love AI, is because can you imagine if I had to go through all my episodes and then get the transcripts and then read through the transcripts and then create an ebook, and it just did it for me. So it's not a long book. So when I recorded the audio, it's only 7 minutes long, because I have, and I'm probably sure you're in the same boat. You go get these books and they're like 50, 60, 150 pages. It's like, just tell me the stuff. So I purposely wanted to come up with a book that gave you like simple things that you can do to be more productive. There's not a lot of stories. It's not a case study. It's not a white paper. It's like, here is a book that can help you be more productive, and just take one thing and run with it and come back and do another thing. I'm a big fan of simplicity, where a lot of the world is going to, hey, how complex can we make this? No, stay away from complexity. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, I hope people go check that out. Mark also has a free email newsletter, The Productive Life. You can sign up for that and look for links. I'll put links to that in the show notes. But again, the URL is pretty easy, MrProductivity.com. So Mark, thank you for joining me here today. Fun to talk about productivity. I mean, look, as an engineer and somebody who has worked a lot on whether you call it productivity or efficiency or effectiveness in my career, this is right up my alley. So glad to meet someone who has that passion for productivity. Thanks for sharing your story. I mean, just to close the loop on that, if you hadn't been fired from that corporate job, you might still be there, but you might not be as happy as you seem to be with the work you're doing now, right?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I think about that from time to time. Had I not been fired, would I still be there? Oh, that's not a happy place for me to go. That's where I go from Tigger to Eeyore, because I did not like to be there at all. And so sometimes, in my case, God, you may call it the universe, sometimes Mama Bird's got to kick you out of the nest. You don't want to be kicked out of the nest, but after you're kicked out of the nest, you realize, oh, I can fly. And then you go on a trajectory which you have never even thought about in your life. So sometimes if you won't make the decision, life makes it for you.
Well, and I'm glad you're able to roll with that, run with it. And I'm glad that it's been working out for you, Mark. So this has been really nice. Thank you again for being a guest here on My Favorite Mistake.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thanks again to Mark for being our guest today. To learn more about him, for links to all of his projects and everything he offers, including the ebook, look for links in the show notes or go to markbraben.com/mistake314. As always, I want to thank you for listening. I hope this podcast inspires you to reflect on your own mistakes, how you can learn from them or turn them into a positive. I've had listeners tell me they started being more open and honest about mistakes in their work. And they're trying to create a workplace culture where it's safe to speak up about problems, because that leads to more improvement and better business results. If you have feedback or a story to share, you can email me, myfavoritemistakepodcast@gmail.com. And again, our website is myfavoritemistakepodcast.com.